Mike, thanks very much. Lap, kind enough to sit in with us. Pelfrey sitting here. Lap, your impressions of this thing right off the bat. It went horribly wrong to begin with, but this team was resilient enough at least to make it a ball game.
Yeah, they made it a ball game, but they can't keep digging the holes they dig in on the road. You know, I mean, this football game broke down to two things, in my opinion. Penalties. First half, 7 penalties for 114 yards and losses, and field position. The Bengals' average drive start was their 20-yard line. The Ravens, their 44-yard line. 15 possessions, 360 hidden yards. The Ravens had short field after short field. They didn't have many yards offense, but they had great field position. The Bengals were continually backed up.
Doug, I'll go to the poll question with you on this one. What do you blame this loss on the most? We're talking about Andy Dalton, the offensive line, the coaching decisions, or the penalties. What do you pick from that?
Honestly, it's all of the above. It's really tough. You know, I hate to throw it on Andy Dalton because there are the other things that kind of weighed into it. But, you know, in a lot of ways, I wouldn't say defensively. I thought defensively we played great. But offensive coaches, I didn't really understand the game plan in a lot of different ways. I thought it was very just confusing why we ran certain plays. I wasn't real comfortable with how we did it. We didn't execute. So, I mean, ultimately it was execution, and I think penalties, I mean, everything played into it. So it's kind of an all of the above. I hate to be so vague.
You're taking an E answer. Dave, you got one that sticks out to you on that?
Well, I mean, I think there was more than one contributing factor to the loss. Turnovers, you know, they're still -7 on the road with 3 turnovers. Kicking game, you know, honestly, Kevin Huber didn't have his best game today. And, you know, Nugent misses a makeable field goal. It turns out to be a big deal in the football game. We get out-kicked, get out field positioned. You know, they're buried 3 times inside the 20. The Bengals were, the Ravens never were. I mean, I think it was a little bit everything. 2 out of the 3 phases I thought were below par. Special teams and offense. Defense played winning football, but you can't win when only 1 out of 3 phases.
We still go back to this. You say you're not going to put it on Andy Dalton, but it always comes down to this in the NFL. It goes back on the shoulders of the quarterback, and here's a quarterback now with back-to-back 3 interception games. He's
obviously struggled too much the last 2 games for any of us, and I think there for a while, those first 3 games, everybody, the last 3 games before that, everybody was so excited about Andy Dalton, talking about how elite he was. I think Andy's a competitor. I think Andy's a good quarterback, but in a lot of ways, you know, there's just the whole thing is just disjointed. I mean, why not stretch the field? They were throwing the ball out to the corner or out to the sidelines so much. There was a linebacker, Smith, that jumped the route, and he could have picked it and gone to the house. And, I mean, there's just so many of those kind of plays. I don't understand the Geo running up the middle as much as they do it. I really think offensively, I think Gruden either calls a great half or a great game, or it just doesn't make sense to me. There's so much more continuity on the defense. The defense played great without 2 of their best players, and you know, to me, it's just coming down. It's not really Andy. He's definitely a contributing factor in a lot of parts, but there's just a lot of things that don't make sense.
Your take on that, Dave?
Yeah, well, Andy didn't throw well. There wasn't a whole lot of separation from receivers. They played 2 safeties deep, about 25 yards the entire football game. They weren't going to let it go over their head, but there were a lot of room between linebackers and safeties in the middle of the football field that I thought they'd take, you know, a little bit better advantage of. And Andy Dalton threw much better with the wind at his back. When he had to throw into that wind, it was a lot tougher for him than it was for Joe Flacco.
We're doing something a little bit new. We're asking you out there to use the hashtag Ask12Sports. Get your questions in. We'll throw a couple on. We'll do this very quickly. First, Linda Beckman says, was the wind a big factor in the passes being thrown in the game? Dave, I'll ask you that.
And I thought it was a big factor for, actually, I mean, Joe Flacco didn't light it up either. He made a couple of good plays in overtime, you know, extending and creating plays, hurting him with his feet as well as his throwing arm, but he cut the wind a lot better than Andy did. Wind definitely affected Andy today, there's no doubt.
We'll get one more question in from Sam Blackburn. This is a good one for you, Pelf. Has overtime decisions now the past few weeks shaken Mike Nugent's confidence?
I don't think it's the decisions, because it ultimately comes down, if he's making kicks, he's going to be very confident. He, you know, to go against a 52-yard field goal there in overtime, you know, I wouldn't have kicked it. I mean, into that wind, he'd already struggled going that direction. The kickoffs had been, you know, struggling that direction the same way. Passing was an issue all day. The wind was definitely a factor. You know, I definitely would have probably, you know, punted there, but I wouldn't go for a field goal.
I got to do this very quickly. I always ask, they win next week?
I think so.
Pelfrey,
I'm always positive.
It's a must football game.
It's a must win for them.